James Alley was portrayed in the Band of Brothers series by actor George Callow. While he was shown in most episodes, he is mostly featured in Episode 8, The Last Patrol. I can't find any record of Alley actually taking part in the patrol, and he does not mention it in his memoirs. Alley was a member of 3rd Platoon and reached the rank of Staff Sergeant in Austria before being demoted for being drunk while on duty. Alley had plenty of stories to tell from his wartime experiences, and it's a shame we didn't see some of them in the series. James Alley was born on July 20, 1922. He was raised in Mount Ida, Montgomery County, Arkansas. Jim's father was a merchant and had his son working in the family shop, selling hardware from a young age. In September 1942, Jim asked for paratrooper service despite the objections of his parents. He was sent to Camp Joseph T. Robertson in Little Rock. They didn't know what to do with him since he had volunteered for the parachute infantry. After sitting around for a number of weeks, Jim was called up to headquarters, where he was given his orders and train tickets to proceed to Camp Toccoa, Georgia. The officers said he was the only one crazy enough to join the paratroopers, and he shipped out on his own. On his arrival at Camp Toccoa, Jim was assigned to Easy Company. In later years, he wondered how the human body could take such punishment as was dished out there, but considered it the main reason why they were such an effective fighting unit. As the company moved on to Fort Benning, Alley was transferred to company headquarters as a newly promoted T5. Unhappy with his new position, he was reassigned as the company mail clerk. By this time, the division had been shipped out to England in preparation for the invasion of France. Jim wanted to return to the 3rd Platoon, so convinced Easy Company CO Lieutenant Thomas Meehan to transfer him back after finding his own replacement, Jerry Wenzel. On D-Day, Wenzel was a member of company headquarters and part of Stick 66 when the plane was hit by flak and crashed near St. Mary Glees, killing everybody on board. If not for the last-minute transfer, it would have been Jim Alley. This, of course, was a similar story to that of Herbert Sobel. Jim's D-Day jump almost resulted in a similar fate when his leg bag got blown back inside the plane due to the prop blast, leaving his upper body hanging outside. Paul Rogers, who was next man in the stick, pushed Jim and his leg bag out the door. Carwood Lipton had been the jump master in the stick and had avoided landing in an area under heavy fire. By the time Jim got clear of the plane, he was floating down toward the town of St. Mary Glees. The garrison had been put on alert earlier in the night when a building in the town center had been struck by a piece of aircraft and a fire had broken out. Many paratroopers came down in the middle of the town square and were killed before or after they touched the ground. Despite being shot at on the descent, Jim landed just behind the city hall, crashing on a stone wall-studded top with glass embedded into it. He then toppled over into the garden on one side. Despite being badly cut up, Jim gathered himself and prepared to move out. As he jumped over the wall with his leg bag, which he had ironically been able to keep on the jump, the crew of a German machine gun spotted him and fired a burst over his head, hitting the wall. He retreated back to the other side where he ate a chocolate bar and considered his next move. Suddenly, a French woman appeared before disappearing back to her house. As Jim moved toward the opposite direction from where the Germans had fired at him, the woman reappeared with a sergeant from the 505th PIR 82nd Airborne. Along with Easy Company buddies Paul Rogers and Earl McClung, the three men fought with the 82nd Airborne for the following 8 days until they finally caught up with their own company near Carrington. On return to England in July following their Normandy campaign, Jim was given 7 days furlough in London and had a ball. Next was the resumption of training and implementation of replacements. On September 17, 1944, Operation Market Garden commenced. As Jim was preparing to jump from his C-47, flak hit the left wing of the plane. Fortunately, everybody made it out. Jim's time in Holland was incident-free until he took part in a patrol on October 5th in an area of Holland labeled the Island. The Germans had ambushed the group and a grenade had blown Jim off his feet. As they retreated back to their lines, he realized he had been wounded. After being evacuated to the rear, Jim spent 2 months in hospital before going AWOL in order to rejoin Easy Company, who were now stationed at Mourmelon, France. As it turned out, Jim arrived back just 2 days prior to the German breakthrough in the Ardennes and made the trip with the rest of the company to Bastogne. He experienced the German artillery and witnessed the injuries to Bill Garner and Joe Toye. He also assisted Walter Gordon after he was shot while manning his .30 caliber machine gun outside of Foy. Jim was one of the few fortunate to get through the Bulge unscathed. He also made it through Hagenau, where he was depicted in the Band of Brothers series. When the end of the war was announced, Jim had enough points to be sent home and was in the first group to do so. He was discharged in September 1945. On his arrival back home, Jim had found that his parents had sold the business and had bought a travel trailer to spend some time exploring the country. His father bought a pool hall in Van Nuys, California, and that's where they settled. Jim, his brother, and father operated the business. After a year, they decided it wasn't the life for them, so moved on. Jim moved to Washington State, where he worked on a remote dam near the Canadian border on and off for the next 2 years. In 1975, he married a girl named Betty from Seattle and moved back to California, where he worked as a general contractor building and remodeling homes. In 1951, Jim and Betty relocated to Marble Mount, Washington, where they spent the rest of their days. They had 3 children while Jim ran his own carpentry business. He retired in 1987 and 3 years later had a triple bypass. Incredibly, he lived for a further 18 years, passing away in March 2008, aged 85. Betty had passed away in 2007. The couple were buried in Union Cemetery, Skagit County, Washington. During his service, Jim was the recipient of 3 Purple Hearts and 4 Bronze Stars. When asked about the Band of Brothers series, Jim stated, "I think all of the attention we are receiving is a terrific honor. I just hope it is not blown out of proportion. I know some of the other companies and regiments in the division will be upset about all of this attention. I know that what we went through was the same as any other company in the division. We are not special. We didn't win the war single-handedly. There were millions of folks in the service during World War II, and they all had a hand in the victory. I know that my life would have been different without the men of Company E. It was such a great experience to meet so many terrific guys, the greatest bunch of guys in the world. It is still quite a group." Jim was interviewed by the Skagit Valley Herald following the release of the Band of Brothers book in 1992. Richard Winters had sent the newspaper a copy of the book and a rundown of Jim's wartime achievements. He had also written to Stephen Ambrose after receiving the original draft with numerous corrections. He was also displeased with the lack of exposure given to other Easy Company veterans. Ambrose replied that he only included material from first-hand accounts or memoirs such as David Webster's, and that only 50% of Easy Company members had returned their questionnaires. Thanks for watching. If you have a thought on Jim Alley and his opinions of Band of Brothers, drop a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, please help the channel out by giving it a like.